Thanks for listening and subscribing to the Clive Barker Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the imagination of Clive Barker. In this episode 213, Jose and Ryan, that's me, we break down the exciting news from the new revelatory interview on clivebarker.info, some new Candyman news, and the new edition of The Painter, the Creature, and the Father of Lies, available on the Clive Barker archive. Welcome, this is episode
213.
Yeah, there we go. 213. They're all blurring together.
Yeah.
This is a news episode, and I'm Ryan.
And I'm Jose. And here we are doing another episode today. We made a commentary track this morning that you guys might enjoy tomorrow, which is going to be Sunday. And this one's
that's next week. This one's going to be tomorrow.
Right. This one's going to be tomorrow. Yeah. So I think you guys are going to enjoy the commentary track. It was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
We had Gary Smart from Leviathan and, RoboDoc and What an Institution, the History of Police Academy.
Yeah.
And the Dark Ditties as well, of course. And our very own Simon Bamford Uber fan, Laurie Markle-Bichet.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yep. So we did a commentary track for Mrs. Wiltshire. So you guys are going to enjoy that next week.
And getting into the news from the Reef, Peter Atkins had appeared on a podcast. So if you want to hear him chat, which was, we had a great time with him when we chatted with him on our podcast. He is going to be on. Boy, I clicked that link a long time ago. It's not getting there.
It's Thorn and Cross, Haunted Nights Live.
Thank you. It's still loading. Oh, my God. Okay.
That's the name of the podcast, Thorn and Cross. So it happened January 23rd at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern time zones. I didn't catch it. I have to admit it. Maybe I can catch a podcast recording of this. Yeah.
Hopefully so. I didn't hear it either, but yeah, I think I bet Rob did. He was going to join us, but then he kind of was not feeling good. So yeah.
I think the blog post that Rob did is very funny. A part where he says, when you have Peter Atkins on your show, if you ask him to talk about toilet paper, I think he would talk for 2 hours. And afterwards, you'd be inspired to go out and buy a whole shelf of Charmin Ultra Soft.
Yeah.
Send us a check, Charmin.
Yeah, right. And then Rob made an interesting point that I didn't see in any other blogs. This is about Candyman. He thought that because there's been this news all over that this actor was going to be was going to be in the main character in Candyman.
Right.
So Rob supposed that since this character's name was Anthony, that it was baby Anthony, growing up.
True. Yeah. He even used the picture of the baby from Candyman at the ending of the original film as the featured cover image for that blog post. I guess we could make that connection. I understand why he made that connection, and as to whether or not there's any reality to that connection, I'm not so sure, but I guess we'll find out.
I also saw, and I was trying like crazy to look it up, but I couldn't find it, but I had seen a blog post where somebody said that Tony Todd had not been approached for Candyman.
Well, if that's true, that's pretty sad.
Yeah.
I think he would have.
Why make it a sequel when Tony Todd isn't the Candyman?
Right. So the news that Rob talked about was that Lakeith Stanfield, who was in Get Out, he was the guy that gets kind of our main character takes a picture of him with a flash, and then it kind of gets him off going on a seizure kind of thing where he says, "Get out, get out," which is basically the title of the movie. But that actor is now going to be in Candyman, and he's going to play a character called Anthony, who is a pronounced artist in Chicago, who researches the urban legend of Candyman. So to me, this reminds me more of that kid from the second movie, right? You remember the one I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, the
Yeah, the one who had the teacher, and he made a little shrine full of drawings of Candyman and stuff like that.
That, yes, that kid. Okay, I was thinking of like the young adult guy.
Right.
Okay, yeah,
But
no, I know
I
what you
don't
mean.
think that character was called Anthony. I don't remember his name right now. But anyway.
Right.
So who knows if there's going to be any connection? It would be interesting. I mean, definitely Anthony is the name of the baby, so it's a possibility.
Well, and speaking of Candyman, Tony Todd, Tony Todd did an interview where he talked about the proposed Candyman versus Leprechaun movie. That,
Yes.
Rob had brought that up before, but Tony Todd basically said he just turned it down. So it's kind of dead in the water without him, which, he's fine. That's a good thing.
Gee, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he says, Rob said, thankfully, actor Tony Todd turned his idea down without missing a beat, and he explains why to the site comicbook.com with some very valid reasoning. This was around the time of Freddy vs. Jason and Candyman vs. Leprechaun did come across my desk. I saw it and I said, I will never be involved in something like that. Todd shared with Dread Central. I respect the character. Once a horror character becomes something of an icon, like Candyman, reluctantly or not, you have to treat that with respect. I remember watching Abbott and Costello versus Frankenstein continuously as a kid and being amazed that my horror legends were making a comedy. So I guess there are ways to make something like that work, but I wasn't interested in doing that with Candyman, which makes sense, right? I mean, well, Candyman is about this very like I'm talking about the movie version, not the Books of Blood version, but he's a very kind of romantic character, and he's like this tragic, tortured soul that appears when someone summons his name and stuff. I mean, why pit him and the Leprechaun together? What are you going to write around that? It's some woman follows a rainbow and finds a pot of gold at the end with a leprechaun, and then she says Candyman in front of a mirror like 5 times. I don't know. I know I'm not a screenwriter, of course, and people are going to say, "Oh, bro, there's so many ways you could do that work," Yeah, probably, but it's like,
and it's all terrible.
Yeah, it's like when you see Abbott and Costello versus Frankenstein, it's kind of a crappy movie.
Oh, really?
I have the Universal box that has like 30 movies from Universal and whatever. You got like all the Wolfman, all the Frankenstein movies and all that, and it's a terrible movie. I mean, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny, but it's like Bela Lugosi came back to do something like that, and it's kind of sad. Anyway.
Well, and they had already ended on a bad note with Candyman 3, which was really bad. And if that would have been the final nail in the coffin if they had done that. Yeah,
it's like, okay, so Freddy versus Jason works for some reason. I mean, God knows it's got its flaws, but, as a movie, it's pretty entertaining, and you're like, oh, yeah, Freddy versus Jason, that's kind of a fun movie to watch, and literally, I don't like to use this term, but check your brain at the door. But at the end, it was rumored that they were talking about, they get sucked into the lake and there's a vortex, and they get sucked down into hell, and then all of a sudden there's nothing but blackness, and then you see like Freddy's glove glint in the darkness, and it's like all of a sudden these chains appear and they entrap Freddy and Jason, and Pinhead was supposed to show up and say, "Gentlemen, what seems to be the problem?" Yeah. And I'm like, oh, my God. Some people might have thought that would be a good idea, but I just think, I don't know. You just want to push in your glasses and be like, I don't think that's going to work for me. No. So I guess it's subjective. Every fan's going to have its own thing. But, Leprechaun and Candyman, I don't know.
I don't like mashups.
Yeah.
They bug me. I don't even like T-shirts with, like, mashups of things. I think they're irritating, or memes.
To me, it's more like I appreciate that Hellraiser was one of the first movies that I saw in the 80s where there was no comfort, no comedy. It was literally just, it opens up with like this demon from hell putting together pieces of a guy he just tore apart.
Yeah.
And the Cenobites, they don't make crack jokes or anything like that. And it's like, that really showed me that the 80s horror was like kind of changing. They were like tapping into different emotional states to put the monsters on. So I appreciate that. I don't like comedy with my monsters unless they're just like classical monsters who at this point I don't really care about anymore. Um, yeah, I still care about Hellraiser.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even despite all the crap that it's been through.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Well, and I'm not going to be able to open this one, so I was curious. The Dark Delicacies fundraiser, so they need to move locations, and they did a fundraiser, and they had backing from like Guillermo del Toro,
Uh-huh.
and I think they met their goal, but I can't click on the link to find out. But
Oh yeah, I can do that for you. Just
okay,
let me go ahead and do that. Yeah, so they made a GoFundMe for to cover the relocation fees, and it seems like they've made $31,606 out of their $30,000 goal, which means that Del Howison is going to have a new Dark Delicacies somewhere else.
yeah,
You know, they used to be in Burbank, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, well, and the place they're in now isn't the place that I visited in 2008, so they've moved
Ah.
once already. But
Hmm.
I think it's called like Magnolia Park. I've seen his posts on Facebook about it. He complains about the management there and something about parking. I'm not sure exactly, but he's had some
Yeah,
trouble
he
there.
said our escalating rent over the last few years created an enormous financial strain. Some days we were just happy to be able to keep our lights on. Moves are expensive, and this one is no exception. So we are asking for a little help in making a resurrection possible. And yeah, they did it. So kudos to Dark Dell and Dark Delicacies because they'll continue to live on in a different location, but
Yeah.
you're going to be able to keep going there and buy your favorite authors' books and autographed copies and stuff. I have to thank Dill Howison because I bought a first edition hardcover signed by Clive Barker that was actually at the Dark Delicacy store. And, I called him. He posted on Facebook, and I called him, and he said, all right, let's do it. Let me just take down your credit card information. And within a few days, I had that book in my hand. It was amazing.
That is so cool.
Yeah,
He's I mean, I've told that story too many times, but he was just super nice to me when I visited.
yeah, he had a broken leg.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you break that leg?
I was running down the stairs holding Joey in my arms, and I
Oh,
turned my ankle
oh my
and
goodness.
broke it. And so I kind of went down on my knees, and I slid the rest of the way down the stairs on my knees. And then
Oh,
when I hit the floor, I kind of dropped down and kind of rolled Joey across the floor.
oh, wow. That must have been so scary.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Jeez.
was. I was so afraid I was going to fall on him or drop him, which I did
Yeah.
kind of drop him, but I
Yeah, you
more,
cushioned most of it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, no. Okay, well, wow. I did not expect that. That
yeah.
escalated quickly. Right. So, Dark Dell, you're going to be able to continue to go to Dark Delicacies, although it's going to change to a different place.
Yeah.
So, kudos to that. And what else is new?
Oh, there was a new Clive Barker interview, and so we'll kind of parse it out and talk about some of the cool stuff that came out of it. Along with that interview, Phil and Sarah also announced that they had done a new edition of The Painter, the Creature, and the Father of Lies. So this is a paperback edition, but it's updated, so it has some new content, and the first 500 copies are autographed by Clive.
Yeah, and it seems like it's still available. I purchased mine this week.
Mm-hmm.
I've already seen people, I kind of dropped the ball on this one, but I already saw people on Facebook getting their copy from Phil and Sarah, especially people who are actually in the UK because
Yeah.
that's where the book is shipping from. But it looks pretty cool, and I do have the hardcover when it came out. I got that one.
Me too.
And yeah, it's a pretty awesome book. It's kind of a second volume of like Shadows in Eden, so
Yeah,
to speak,
yeah. And
because it collects.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it collects all the nonfiction that Clive has done since 1982 to present day.
And I didn't see. I was looking at it today because I was toying with the idea of buying, and it's $22, and I did U.S. in the U.S. and I didn't see where they said that they were sold out of the first 500 autographed copies.
It's not. It's still, I'm looking at the page of the Clive Barker archive, and it still says The Painter, the Creature, and the Father of Lies, revised edition, signed, $22. So it's still there.
Man.
They still haven't covered all the 500 copies. So if you're listening to this on Sunday, this is your chance. Go get it, because we have no idea how long that's going to last.
I may have to put in my order before we post this episode.
Oh, yeah. I strongly urge you, because I have no idea. This has been for sale for like, what, a week now?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's revised. So it also has some artwork on the inside. And they added 11 additional pieces of interior artwork, making for a total of 46 pieces of artwork on the inside by Clive Barker.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. And so one of the pieces of news was a quick update on the Nightbreed TV series. They talked about they were assembling a team, and they're going to be putting together the overarching story for the Nightbreed TV series. So basically, he was just saying that it's still an ongoing project.
Mm-hmm. Yep, he's saying that Nightbreed is moving forward at quite a rate, with a couple of very well-known directors showing a great deal of interest in it. He says, I'm on board to provide mythologies and ideas, and hopefully put the Barkerian weirdness on the material. At the moment, we're putting the team together. We have a writer, director, producers, and now that the new year has begun, we'll all get together and start to plan the long-term narrative, not just the opening narrative, which is what we've done so far. We'll put down a link for the revelatory interview. That's the 33rd revelatory interview at the Clive Barker Revelations website.
Yeah, because that you really should read the whole interview. But if you don't want to, we will also talk about the news that came out of there, like the new novel Deep Hill, which is actually formerly known as Scare Baby.
Right, the Scare Baby. That was just a title at some point, right? And then we even made an April's Fool blog post about Scare Baby. We were saying that it's going to be what was the story that it was going to be?
It was going to be that one-page poem from Aberrat.
Yeah, that was going to be a super special edition.
A deluxe hardcover with one page.
Yeah, that was our for April's Fool blog post like 2 or 3 years back. But now it's real, and he's been working on it for longer than we thought, and it's turning into a new book called Deep Hill. So very exciting news. We'll have to wait and see when this is coming out. We have a history of Clive Barker announcing projects that are way beyond completion.
Yeah.
So he's been talking about the Scarlet Gospels for almost 15 years or more before it actually came out. So but Amazon.com once jumped the gun and listed Scare Baby available for pre-order back in 2017.
Right.
And then it disappeared, right?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and speaking of news that disappeared, the Books of Blood TV series. You remember a while back, Bleeding Cool did a blog post saying that there was going to be a Books of Blood TV series with oh gosh, what are their names?
Produced by Seth MacFarlane and Brannon Braga.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And so I was going back through the news and trying to find that original article, and it was gone. They deleted it. So I think at first we thought it was, at least I thought it was because it was bogus. But, now we know differently. It's because they probably weren't supposed to share that yet.
Yes, and I picked that one as one of my top 10 most exciting moments of 2018. I believe.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I half believed. I believed. I didn't know. It just literally came out on that one article, and like you said, it later disappeared, and we were like, was that just like someone throwing a pot of spaghetti against the wall and seeing if it sticks?
Yeah.
I didn't know. Sometimes, these things get rumored, and the rumor gets picked up by an article, and then everybody else copies that same article. In this case, it was kind of like a little flash of light in the darkness, and nobody really picked up on it except for us, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and
And
they didn't name a source, and it was a very short article, and it was full of spelling errors, and all the comments were full of people saying this is, this is BS, and
yeah,
so it didn't have a lot going for it in terms of like believability.
yeah. But again, in this 33rd revelatory interview, Clive, talks about that. He says
Yeah.
that he's talking about the books of blood, and he has a lot of insightful commentary on that.
Yeah.
I have a couple of quotes I would like to bring. He says, for example, that he's working on the television adaptation of the Books of Blood, a series I'm working on with Brannon Braga, Star Trek, Cosmos: A Spacetime Odyssey. Is going forth speedily, and working with Brannon is an absolute joy. He says, I am hoping that in the Books of Blood series, we will not only go to the most chilling and intense of the books, but I will add to that the sum of stories, new tales that perhaps wouldn't even have occurred to me 30 years ago. The world has changed. The world has become a darker, scarier place since then. Unbelievably, but it's true. And he says, and he goes on this very, I found it very particularly insightful paragraph. He says, for example, we live in a lonely culture and we are desocialized, not resocialized by the internet. And what is the consequence of being alone? I think we are more alone, we are more isolated than ever. And one of the most ancient cliches of murder, I suppose, is, the woman who walks alone down a dark street is very vulnerable. We're trying to avoid that. We're trying to avoid, as I hope the original books did, the cliches of the woman alone, the woman who makes dumb choices, that terrible sexist cliche. If the Books of Blood could have been called modern 30 years ago, we want to be modern for now. And that means looking at our culture, looking at our society, and analyzing it and seeing how it has changed, seeing how its terrors are changing, have changed, and will continue to change. So, wow, this interview kind of blew my mind a little bit
Yeah.
because, from a very subdued Clive Barker on the first time that we saw him at Texas Frightmare Weekend, and who has not been giving lots of interviews, and in the last few years has not even left the house that much until recently. Yeah, so from a very subdued Clive that we met at Texas Frightmare Weekend, it seems like Clive is still maintaining his very active, creative internal life, and he's being very insightful. And I wish I could see more interviews of him in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. This was great, and this was kind of a return to the revelatory interviews that we missed. Of course, the bad thing about those is he talks about so many projects, and you get all excited about them, and then, then they kind of, the Hollywood process takes its toll, and so many of them disappear or become nothing.
Yeah, because it's always a matter of money. It's always comes
Yeah.
down to money. Money to produce these things the way they should be produced.
Yeah.
But these are excellent intellectual properties. Excellent stuff that's just waiting with enormous potential to be developed. So
Man, I hope
this is
they
great.
do every story, regardless of whether there's been a movie or not.
Yeah, and it seems that he's also talking about making new stories.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of an extension of the Books of Blood, turning it into like an ongoing anthology kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think they should do Dread and Midnight Meat Train and make them super faithful. They don't have to stretch them out to 90 minutes. They just do them whatever length they're supposed to be.
That sounds really awesome.
That's my 2 cents.
What really grinds my gears? Anyway, so what else do we have?
That's it for the news.
Yeah.
But on the site, Rob did an article called "BarkerCast Presents Coil, Pleasure, and Pain." Is that a Coil album?
Yeah. No, it's the name of the article, but yeah, it's about the unreleased Hellraiser themes by Coil. So he's posted it. It's kind of like a Tuesday Tunes, but in this case, he made it a BarkerCast Presents. So he's just talking about how Roman Pictures, a YouTube channel, has taken some of Coil's music and put it over some of the scenes. And I really recommend watching that because the results are very interesting. Yeah.
And also on the site, our most recent commentary was Dark Ditties Presents The Offer. with Laurie Markle Bichet. And coming up, we'll also be posting up the interview that we just recently did for the second episode, Mrs. Wiltshire.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to make. A very, very good episode to rewatch. And if you haven't watched it, watch it first before you listen to our commentary.
Yeah. There's a lot of spoilers and stuff, and it's really better to have seen it once. It's a kind of thing that you want to see more than once anyway. Yeah,
because it's like this. Yeah, I don't want to spoil it. It's really good, and there's a lot of repeat viewing value to it. Yeah, I would say. Yeah.
So I think that's it. This is a relatively short episode, I guess, for this time.
Yeah, but I cannot stress enough. Go read the 33rd Revelatory interview. With Clive Barker, done by Phil and Sarah Stokes.
Oh, and one thing he talked about in there, I guess we can kind of go back to it a little bit. Clive had mentioned that he was going to be even stepping up his convention appearances, and he talked about going back to England, which is kind of which is cool, because I know a lot of people talk about that, or they're like, "Hey, you're from England, how come you never come back here?" So that would be great.
Yep. So let's see what happens there. He says Clive Barker is alive and well and living in the fantastic lands he's always lived in, from which there will come novels and short stories and eventually films. So this is a great moment to thank everybody who's had the common sense and faith in me, to stay in contact with me, to stay in faith with me, to believe in me. And he's also given a great thanks to the thousands of people who turned out in Dallas and in Chicago to say, hey, it's been too long, and I will not be invisible again unless I'm for a certain period making a movie or whatever. But my intention is to make sure that people know that Clive Barker is not only alive and well, but piled high with ideas.
Well, that's good. Yeah, that's good to see. All right. Well, in this podcast, having no beginning will have no end. You can find the show notes for this episode and join the discussion over at www.clivebarkercast.com, where we have news, features, reviews, and links to all the ways you can connect with us. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts and every other place you can find podcasts. Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial, podcast, and news blog that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans.
Thanks for listening.